so far, but I can't lose it.
Let's be innovative. Let's challenge a norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
To be the best, one must beat the best. Ovals, road courses, the streets of iconic cities, race after race, the top sim racing IndyCar stars will battle it out. In sim racing, it doesn't get any better than this. This is their battleground, for the checkered flag, for the glory, for the right to say they are the best. The cars and stars of the Lionheart IndyCar Series, presented by Butt Kicker, are ready to race.
Last year, the Lionheart IndyCar Series made its first trip across the pond to the home of British motorsports. For 33 laps, the story of an all-time classic was written as Adam Blocker and Joshua Chin put on a masterclass at the front of the field. But on the final lap, the fireworks went off, and through the final corner, the battle ended in contact. Adam Blocker was able to limp across the line to grab victory, but a classic race became infamous in the blink of an eye. This is Silverstone, and this is the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Silverstone, presented by MOZA Racing. Hello everyone, and welcome back to RaceSpot TV for coverage of the 2022 Lionheart IndyCar Series. The Lionheart IndyCar Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, alongside is the one, the only Justin Prince, and let's dive straight into our butt kicker pre-race show. Justin, when I think about what we saw in 2021, not here but across the season, the race that sticks out at the forefront of my mind is this race. Joshua Chin, Adam Blocker, wheel to wheel for 33 laps. It all ended in tears on the final lap though. What are we expecting here today?
Well, this is the tough racetrack when it comes to road course racing for a reason. Lots of speed carried a special ton down to hater strength. But this racetrack in particular is not a very easy one for competitors to try and get the flow around, I should say. Lots of runoff space, yes, but lots of areas where they can get loose and snap around. This is also the type of event, as we've seen throughout this year's practices as well as last year's race, where drivers will be looking to try and take some daring moves, but also need to find a way to balance those out to get into the positions to challenge.
Do you remember last year's race in the middle of July? We're not truly, 12 months on, but the tire model has gone through such a significant change that it'll be interesting to see how drivers adapt to that challenge here today as we look at your next level racing schedule. Second of our races in April will go back-to-back in a week's time, heading to Nashville for the first time in series history, but all eyes today on our first proper road course of the season. Of course, round 2 saw us go to the streets of Long Beach. Here's a look at your driver's standings presented by Butt Kicker, and it's been the Phil Krause show so far in 2022. What a start to the season he's had, winning 3 of the 4 races. Jason Brophy sits in second. Your defending champion, 4-time champion Adam Blocker, only in third. I think it's fair to say, Justin, Adam Blocker very much on the back foot as we work our way into the middle part of the campaign.
Crazy thing is, he's got a victory in 2 top 5s in the season, but the tough thing has been the other 2 races are what have been really hurting him this campaign. Last year, he rarely finished, of course, in fact never did, outside the top 5. This year, with the different changing environments of having to travel around for work, I think maybe part of the factor, but also just the competition level and the comfortability, maybe, of how things are faring out in the early going, because qualifying hasn't worked out in his direction in any of the rounds, quite frankly, and he's really been on the back foot from the drop of every green flag this season. That's really forced him to try and propel ahead compared to last year, where he was a candidate normally inside the top 5.
Didn't matter where we went, what type of race we did. Blocker was very much in the mix, and we'll see how things shake up for him. We'll have a look at the team standings in a sec, but do grab a look at where the private label Team Hype and the Powerslide Adrenaline drivers are. Both of those camps see all 3 of their drivers nestled inside of the top 10, and when you look at these HyperX team standings, that gets played out. They are by far running away at the front of the field. Although having said that, the private label Team Hype machine continues to work away here, almost 140 points clear of that Powerslide Adrenaline team. And Alexander Van der Sant's had a good start to the season. Andrew Kinsella's not had a bad start by any means either, but they need to work together as a crew here, JP, to start bringing that performance. This is the race where maybe they can expect to get a little bit more of that ground clawed back, because of course Jason Brophy, we know how strong he is on the ovals, does tend to struggle a little bit more on the road courses.
Yeah, Jason Brophy, we already know, is an oval specialist, especially with his experience in the eNASCAR camps. So I think that's going to be a major factor points-wise in regards to their full-time competition. Powerslide Adrenaline, keep in mind, though, you factor that side in, it's not an easy time for them either on the road courses. Some of their drivers have had tough moments there in the past. But the main momentum, I think you can say, though, when it comes to Powerslide Adrenaline, is this year in the IndyCar Open side of things. Adam Blocker, Alexander Van de Sant, usually were 1-2 in those road course races, you call it, Arjuna, throughout last season. I wouldn't be surprised to see them be competitors once again for the top spots to help in those team standings.
Oh, absolutely, and as we grab a look at your butt kicker rookie standings, what's played out for Phil Krause in the overall standings, well, it makes its way over to these rookie standings as well. He's almost 150 points clear of Alexander Van de Sant, but we are coming off, of course, the double points, triple crown race at Pocono, so the gaps have been blown up a little bit more. Malechka, Bensi, let's give a shout out to Caleb Bensi for a quick moment here, Justin. I mean, we know he's quick. We saw this in the Speedway Series last year, but what a start to the campaign he's had in front of someone like Robert Malechka, who almost won last year's Speedway Series crown despite missing the first 4 or 5 races of the season.
Yeah, it was an incredible run. It has been an incredible run for Caleb Bensi, where he's carried a lot of momentum that he had mostly on the short track courses in the Speedway Series to every event so far in the IndyCar Series. I've been impressed with what I've seen. The major thing I will say for some of those drivers, like Alexis Newsom, for Robert Malechka, they're coming from that Speedway Series, today could be a struggle because in regards to their history, when they came up into the road courses, Silverstone among some of their first starts, in fact, they struggled, and struggled big time.
Yeah, this was the site of the first race for Malechka, for Rolf, and for Newsom in the 2021 Lionheart IndyCar Series. Should be noted, Alexis Newsom does have the fastest lap, although, like Justin mentioned, it did not go swimmingly for your 2021 Lionheart Speedway Series champion. Here's a look at your Gomez Sim Industry Series details. It's the 10th season of the Lionheart IndyCar Series in the 9th year of the Lionheart Racing Series. We're campaigning the latest generation of American open-wheel machinery, the Dallara IR18 with a custom fix setup and in-car tools. We'll talk more about that in a couple of moments' time. Cash and prizes up almost $3,000 to over $10,000. Just finished our first Triple Crown race. We're heading into the month of May, where, of course, all eyes focus on the real world in the Brickyard and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Will focus, though, on Indianapolis here in Lionheart in the month of June. Everyone is chasing your 4-time champ Adam Blocker and the defending team champions, the private label Team Hype. Of note as well, your series champion will win a Gomez Sim Industries Formula Pro Elite steering wheel, as well as a next level racing GT track cockpit. With that said, let's talk about today and the MOZA Racing event details. It's a return to the home of British motorsports after its inaugural trip here about 12 months ago. An all-time classic. I think we were enjoying that race immensely. Adam Blocker, Joshua Chin, plenty of respect showed until the final couple of corners where Josh Chin gave as good as he got. Adam Blocker did the same as well. It all led to contact through the very final quarter. Adam Blocker limping that car across the line. The main question, I think, today, JP, in a race that saw 7 lead changes last year, how will drivers use both tire compounds? It's a 34-lap race. The fuel window, 12-13 laps. Drivers required, of course, to use both compounds. I get the sneaking suspicion we'll see plenty of drivers favor the Black Mark primary tire. It's a little bit harder, grips a little bit less initially, but lasts a little bit longer. I think drivers will be somewhat reluctant to be using the reds, but like we saw at Long Beach, Adriano Pinheiro started on pole position, started on the blacks. By the time we got to the first cycle of the race, first pit stop cycle of the race, I should say, he was out of race-winning contention.
That's going to be the major discussion point, I think, for many of the camps, if they haven't already had those discussions several times over, because the fall-off differential is not as big when it comes to the Blackwall tires. However, when it comes to the reds, quicker times usually on the overall set, but the fall-off in general, for a majority of the field at Long Beach, went slower than the blacks by about the halfway mark of the run, except for 2 or 3 drivers. So in other words, it's going to be a decision that you have to take seriously, because you know that pace is going to be off by about a second or so right from the get-go. You need to choose right at a big track such as this, with a lot of laps expected to be logged here today.
I'm not a driver, and I always say never trust a commentator's math, never trust a commentator's strategies. However, if I was in this race, I start on the reds, I go for 10 laps, excuse me. Then I go to the blacks for a 13-lap stint. Might require a bit of fuel saving, but it means the final stint of the race is 11 laps on the red mark tire when the track temperatures are likely to have cooled off just a little bit more. Here's a look at our venue today. It's the home of British motorsports, of course. Underwent a revamp about a decade ago to add the new wing complex that is that new pitch straightaway. But this is a fast and flowing track. Relatively flat, yes, but I think, JP, what we're going to see today is drivers struggling with track limits, of course. Mercedes working together with iRacing to bring the latest generation of Formula One cars to iRacing. They also have gone around some of these Formula One circuits and updated the track limits, and drivers have been talking about the potential for disqualifications today.
Yeah, in particular, the off-track rule, keep in mind, when it comes to this circuit is if half the cars within the boundaries of the track, you're inside the circuit. If it's outside those boundaries, that's where the off-track is, except for off-track limits occurring with four wheels off the edge in various red-lined marks, essentially, where once you rejoin, you have some space to do so if you get out by the time the red marks end. Turn 1 has one of those major areas today. Turn 3, for example, also one of the major sections to think about. That's the run through Abbey all the way up towards Village. There's also the runoff space coming out of entry. You also have the ability to have some of that coming essentially out towards the Wellington Straight. You also have those opportunities within Brooklands and Luffield. The run out through Woodcote has several of them. There's also some of the final sections to do so out of the Hayner Straight, out of Stowe into Vale and towards Club, which will be major balancing acts for some of the drivers to keep those in mind to make sure they don't get an off-track penalty or an off-track incident point.
Just under 6 kilometers in length. It is one of the longest tracks that we've got on the schedule this season. Let's not dawdle. Let's go trackside and let's see what's going on out here in this facility as we look from up above at the home of British motorsports. Phil Krause, Connor Harrington 1 and 2 for the private label team up. Aaron Morgan sits in third with Robert Malechka doing well in qualifying to run in fourth, and Adam Blocker only 5th fastest so far, but there is the chance for these cars to roll themselves back out for a couple more flying lap opportunities. Lap time for Phil Krause, a 1:39.016. It is going, I should say, to be a qualifying lap record. Last year, we were seeing lap times in qualifying of a 99, so a 1:39.261.
Pace really picking up, especially should say in qualifying, because some of the drivers have picked up as much as 2/10 as the laps have progressed. They built heat into the tires. Keeping my eye, for example, on Adam Blocker, though. He's on his final lap. In fact, right now, he did not record a validated lap the past 2 laps. And right now, if he wants to compete for the pole position, fight with Phil Krause, who has been red hot this season and was one of the top competitors for Adam Blocker on the road courses last year and at Long Beach, he needs that 0.4 of a second without picking up an incident point.
That's by design, I think. We'll talk more about that. Let's ride on board for the second half of this lap, basically into Brooklands and into Luffield, a double apex corner where you see hugging the inside, run a bit wide, and then V the car back in through onto the old pit straightaway. Off to the right, they still use this area when the GT3 cars come to race here, but into Copse, the scene of drama between Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton 12 months ago. It is so high commitment. It is so rewarding when you get it right. But this is the section where dreams are made and times are lost. Maggots and Beckett's into 5th, down to 4th. Look at Blocker balancing the car to get this crucial run off of the corner. Got to watch those track limits on the left-hand side as you round yourself through Chapel onto the Hangar Straight, under the bridge, and begin your climb up the hill into Stowe Corner. Remember, 39.016 the lap time to beat. Off camber is this penultimate corner where it's always pushing you wide, and Blocker, I think, has just about wrangled it into the track limits and down into the scene of drama last year. The Vale chicane, nice and tidy initially. Watch those anti-cut curves. Adam Blocker to the line as Alexander Van der Sande jumps up into 5th. What can your defending champion do? It's a 39.387. It's only good enough for 5th. Blocker has some work to do.
Yeah, that's a massive difference even to his best practice time where he was an hour 2/10 quicker. That would have put him second if he did the same. But he has Alexander Van der Sande starting alongside him, a teammate in the series to keep an eye on as well. Also keep in mind with some of the drivers within that half a second difference towards the pole, Adriano Pinheiro, expect him to be a contender. He was lightning quick much of the practice session.
Well, the time for talk is done. The time for racing is upon us. We're ready to go for the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Silverstone, presented by MOZA Racing. Let's go trackside to run you down through the starting grid for round 5 of the Lionheart Racing Series. And so here is your butt kicker starting grid. Philip Kraus puts it on pole with a 1:39.016. What a lap time as he looks to make history as just the second driver, the first not named Adam Blocker, to put it into victory lane for 3 consecutive races. What a storyline that would be for him, as this does mark now his second career pole position. Connor Harrington makes it a private label team a hype affair on the front row with Aaron Morgan. Great qualifying for him. Always got pace on the road courses. He'll line up alongside, somewhat surprising in qualifying, Robert Malechka. Adam Blocker and Alexander Van der Sande. It's the power slide adrenaline duo that share row number 3. While down in 7th position, Matt Taylor and Adriano Pinheiro roll off alongside one another. Ryan Otis and Michael O'Brien complete the top 10 with Lionel Callisto and Mike Rasmas right behind them. Andrew Kinsella, not a bad qualifying effort for the Canadian and the Race Spot team member. He'll be alongside Chris Fowler in the 20. Madworks Motorsports Dallara IR18. Tyler Graf from 15th alongside Adam Frazier in 16th with Mitchell Riggs and Alexis Newsom sharing row number 9. Watch for Newsom was fairly consistent here, and behind her, the Barrett Rolfe, number 33, Ascari Autosport Machine. Stefan Larkamp rounds out the top 20 with James Brandt, Caleb Benty, Matthias Kraus, and Dustin Wardlow. The 2 rows behind them, Jason Brophy, Alex Guyon, 25th and 26th, with Andrew Marquez and Kite Bommersbach right behind them. Through the top 30, you find Matt Houston and Brian Carey. Carey not enjoying a good qualifying for him. He's really not going to enjoy that with Chris Lanini, AJ Musselman, Paul Jenkins, Luis Gonzalez, Nunez, Tony Chown, Mike Rigney, the 36 with Brian Beard, the final car lining up today. And as always, we've got featured cameras to walk you through, and as they begin to roll, we don't have much time to run you through them. So let's quickly run you down through these featured onboards. Starting first with Andrew Marquez, who has the MOZA Racing onboard, redefining sim racing. Go further, go faster with MOZA Racing. Visit MOZARacing.com.
With the butt kicker on board, it's Michael O'Brien. Sim racing is better with butt kicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com.
I'll run you down through that final onboard later in this race because we're ready to go racing. At the front of the field, it's a private label team hype affair. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and this is the start of the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Silverstone presented by MOZA Racing. Nice jump from the teammates up front, coordinating amongst the 2 of them as they slot themselves down into Village. Oh my word, almighty chaos through the first corner. About 5 different cars getting mixed up, and who's that that's gone around on the entry into the Village loop? What a start that we've got, but the top 5, the top 10 or so, somehow survive.
Tyler Graf, I believe, was in that green machine running the Lotus green colors today.
Oh, more carnage! Adam Blocker's around. Your defending champions looped it on the entry down into the Swellington straightaway. What is in the air in Silverstone? Absolute chaos, absolute carnage, and Phil Kraus will have the widest smile here at the home of British Motorsports.
You know the funny thing about the first sector and its chaos? Among some of the drivers who, in one of the final practice starts held in this session, it was Barrett Rolfe who was amongst those who spun around. He was involved in more trouble. Speaking of trouble, Tyler Graf has spun it again and has nearly been hit in Sector 2.
We'll grab a look at, I'm sure, the first of many replays in a couple of moments' time. But for now, through Maggots and Beckett's for the first time. Cold tires, well, we haven't talked about weather conditions. I just wonder if they're playing a factor. Here's a look at them, 34 degrees Celsius. By no means cool, but by no means warm. Connor Harrington's gone off the trap. Robert Malechka take a bow up to 2nd position.
My goodness, what in the world for Robert Malechka III, because last year, he really struggled here. And every road course.
Look at this. Sorry, JP, but this is like super speedway style action down into Stowe Corner. Incredible stuff. I still have to try and figure out. There goes the Ascari Autosport Machine down onto pit lane. That looked like Mitchell Riggs at the front of the field. Robert Malechka, we're talking about his pace.
They crashed in that same section. Blanker just got in another crash, and he brought Jason Brophy with him to the grass.
Now, we have seen automatic cautions in the past. There's Paul Jenkins, Jason Brophy, and I saw Brian Carey scampering for the hills as well. This, I think, has been caused by many drivers starting on the black mark tires. The one driver that's not on the black mark primary, Robert Malechka, who's going for the lead, and Malechka leads for the first time on the road courses in his Lionheart career.
Absolute change from last year, to say the very least. Last year, he was maybe towards the middle of the pack at best. This year, you can tell some of the experience with some of the drivers he's worked with to improve his road course racing skills, especially in official racing, Arjuna. A massive difference in terms of his output. absolute big change for the 91, but absolutely insane start for a lot of the contenders expected for this race, who are mostly outside of Philip Kraus, of the top 9.
Now, we usually would go side by side, but there's so much going on that we're going to just go full screen and pick this stuff apart. So first, I think that's Barrett Rolfe and Chris Fowler that come together, and that's a big old incident. I think Mitchell Riggs maybe then took a little bit of damage as well. What happened subsequently to Tyler Graf? Let's see if we can find a look with him, because he looks tidy initially in that almost Aston Martin-inspired entry. That's Lionel Kalisto that I think spins it around in the 97. And Graf has got to take avoiding action.
I mean, he kept it just at the very edge of those incident point areas.
Oh!
Then look at that. That was side by side with, I think, Aaron Morgan.
Yes, it was. That's a good spot. So more. And then, Adam, I'm a big fan of yours, but that is an unsafe rejoin, to put it mildly. Here's another look, and let's look from up above. So they're pushing each other wide. They're always struggling there, and Adam Blocker knows the field is coming. You've got to do better than that.
That's absolutely crazy that he just decided to pull across the track. It was a bad spot, obviously, but there's better than just pulling ahead there, because you know half the field is coming in that sequence with where you were in the starting spots.
Oh.
But you can see a lot of drivers just getting loose, like here with Tyler Graf.
Yeah, and he does a good job, I tell you, to actually stop that in time before it slithers back onto the track. So give 10 out of 10 at least for the save there from the number 98. Then let's have a look at what happens to Connor Harrington if we can, because he has, there we go. That's a big moment on the entry to Maggots and Beckett's. I think Cold Tires really just catch him out through the first part, and there you can see the big old tank slapper that starts to form, and he shoots across the track and somehow hangs onto it. Now let's grab one look at what happened here into the Vale chicane. So Blocker is side by side with his teammate. There's going to be a talk in the debrief there. Brian Carriad and Blocker coming together. It's Jason Brophy that loses out.
Just looking at that, Blocker, very lucky to be able to keep going here. Jason Brophy, the innocent bystander, and you see down there, Harry tries to pull ahead, try and go to the runoff area, but a car was already committed to try and go in that spot. That's the difficult part with this race. And what do we say about expecting a little bit calmer, but also some of the aggression higher? The calmer part's out the window. The aggression level decided to eat it up instead.
Yeah, that... We're now, a year and a half almost basically into Race Spot's coverage of Lionheart competition. The only race that I can remember being as crazy as this is the Retro Series race at Phillip Island, which we're due for Chapter 2 tomorrow. So do check us out tomorrow, same time, same place, Thursday evenings for the Lionheart Retro Series. Connor Harrington's recovery finds him now in front of Andrew Kinsella, as behind him looks like Caleb Benzie having a look on Jay Bryant. Now remember, Connor Harrington taking that trip through the grass would not just have slid him down the order, losing the spot to Malechka. He would have had a slowdown penalty, JP. And because it's the first lap of the race, there's no reference lap time to really be referencing to. iRacing, well, it's not great when you get those first lap slowdowns. They really do feel like an eternity to clear.
Yeah, good couple seconds at minimum. Some of the times that I've seen where you've had to slow it down to, in terms of net time gained, has been, I've seen 5-6 seconds in some cases, and you only have about 30 seconds to get that done before you end up getting an instant black flag. You need to be very careful on how you do that. In some cases, you can be a bit strategic, let's put it that way, but in most cases, especially with the giant ones, you essentially have to come to a near stop and get out of the gas to try and get that penalty undone in time, and hope you pay attention to that. So you see the battle for fourth, but the Airline Company moving ahead as everyone gets loose.
That's Matt Taylor, who's MadWorks Motorsports teammate Michael O'Brien will have to decide, does he want to go aggressive on the run down into turn one. Now remember, Matt Taylor in this race last year finished on the podium, his best ever career finish, and he'll come under pressure. That car clearly not handling well. Down to the inside he comes. Connor Harrington wants a piece of the action too, as he'll go the long way around and get the move done as well. Taylor, I think, has overheated those tires. He's dropping like a stone.
And Taylor looking absolutely tight in some sections. The tough thing has been, it's almost like with even the clean air drivers are constantly having that struggle, like they're getting that feeling of some of the aero wash, yet they're not getting the sensation from the front of the car, so to speak. Here's a look at Kinsella, for example. He's in the midst of the zero train, and even in groupings like this, you can see how tight it can be behind other cars. And I believe something may be going on with the one car on top of things, because remember the contact we just seen? He may have something coming up involving it.
I would not be shocked if he gets some sort of penalty for that, which might not be the worst thing to get that penalty now. He's running in 18th, and, serve the penalty now rather than Nashville, where we are expecting a rather tough race to work through the field. There goes Luis Gonzalez Nunez side by side with Chris Lanini in the 92 into Cops. They'll single file themselves out down the hangar straight, though. Here comes Rasmus Kinsella coming under fire. The Canadian not going to be able to hold that one off, as Jay Brandt might get a piece of the action too.
Off the shuffling amongst some of those respective cars indeed, and that's the thing I think I've noticed as well is drivers, especially this race, are really not afraid that if you open up the door for them to try and take the dive and utilize some of the push to pass, they'll try and utilize it. By the way, the penalty referred to, Blocker's now serving it. He's in the pit lane now for that incident.
So you can see him. I actually haven't seen the penalty come through. At least
it was over radio.
Okay, so it wasn't actually handed down as an in-sim penalty. So that's a crucial distinction. Oh, Tony Schowen in the Farm Rescue 31 having a trip through the grass, through the Vale chicane. We'll grab a look at what happened there. Let's focus at the front very slightly. We mentioned this earlier. The tire compound choice for Robert Malechka, starting on the red mark tire, has enabled him to fire off a little bit better. I tell you, JP, I don't think that overall this has worked out it's worked out swimmingly, I think is the best way to put it. With all the struggles behind, he might not win this race. Phil Krause, I think, has got one hand on the victory already with just 6 laps, or about to be 6 laps in the books. But, at worst, I think Malechka may lose out to Van der Sat. I don't foresee him dropping much further than that.
I mean, the main thing I think, though, on top of that is you don't really plan for absolute craziness to happen to all your competitors expected battle for the win. That really helps you gain track position. But I will say this, that for Malechka the third, I've been impressed with how he's been driving these corners, even with the tire compound difference. I think Phil Krause really getting some of the benefits, in particular from the draft more so currently. But I think the main indicator will be when they swap the tire compounds in about 5 laps or so when the pit window opens up here.
Expect the cars that started on the primaries to go long in this race. You won't see them go short. I think that is very much the expectation. Malechka will come in early and then feed into some of that traffic behind. A trip down pit road is going to cost you about 34 seconds just from the pit entry cones to the pit exit cones. Malechka and Krause both on the button. Krause is going for it, I tell you, to the inside, in towards Brooklyn's heel run. Gives the outside to Malechka, who again has the inside through that double apex Luffield corner, but those tires clearly not hanging on that well. Krause hangs it around the outside and should get the position done.
Here's that major risk I just referred to right from Long Beach. Short run, especially to around the halfway point, it was the quicker tire, but around this cutoff point, halfway through the tire stint, that's when the tires at Long Beach fell off a cliff outside of a couple drivers. Philip Krause was amongst those who were able to maximize and prevent a lot of the fall off that everyone else had seen that race. In our words for Krause, this is his true chance to try and break the draft and pull away, compared to Malechka the third, who may fall off up to as much as nearly a second off these blacks now.
I'll repeat, I think Malechka has very much got this one in the bag. Let's grab a look at what happened with Tony Schowen into that final corner. Oh, just deep, locks it up. Yep, there you go, trying to turn in while slowing down that car, and he does a good job once he gets off into the kitty litter to make sure he doesn't spin it around and then bring it back on in a controlled fashion. I think that's the word that we're going to use there, as a swap between Brian Beard and Adam Frazier down into Stowe, with Tyler Graf's recovery building right behind them. Working lap 8 of this race. Take a breath, JP. It's calming down now.
Well, I think partly it's with some of the fall, partly a lot of the drivers, I think, have been able to calm down and get some things out of their system, so to speak. But when you take things in serious consideration here, especially with dives such as this towards the inside, some of the drivers are really starting to really feel those effects of the tire wear. In particular, outside of those on those reds, like Malechka the third, you have to keep an eye, I think, of Matthias Krause, who gained 8 spots for the craziness. Kite Bomber's back is currently up 11 spots on the Reds. Paul Jenkins, he's gained 1 spot only in 32nd. Some of those drivers really going to be slipping and sliding now, and that could break up a couple of the packs in the middle of the field.
Adam Blocker then rides down in 26th position after that drive-through penalty at best. 28 seconds off the lead. I think he's trying to get up into the top 15. He does carry the HyperX onboard camera today. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. We'll see plenty of passes from this vantage point, I think, through the course of the race. He's just behind, guess who? The car that he tangled with on lap 1, Aaron Morgan.
With Adam Blocker having probably the worst first lap he's had, I think, in a long time in Lionheart. He could be, even if he recovers all these positions, be on track for his worst finish in years, because he was top 5 for every race in 2021, essentially. It's not been the greatest of starts, yes, this year. He finished a couple times outside the top 10 this campaign. This is an absolute flip of the script of what we've expected from the King of Lionheart before the season.
Very much so. I agree. I think maybe the pressure after, again, the first race, we didn't expect it to go well. He had a last-minute call to race away from home, from James Krahula's home, so new hardware, new surroundings, didn't get much practice time, but at least was able to get some points on the board. Then Long Beach took the victory. The week after that, got called to Indianapolis to do some testing there, and again had to race from a hotel room, this time with a wheel borrowed from his teammate Robert Malechka, and racing on some spotty cell service. I think, you know, that is something, but at home, knowing that Kraus is already running away somewhat with this championship. Yes, we're only in round 5, but things can change so quickly. Here's the move into Luffield from Blocker, again going the long way around, but can really get the power down nice and early. We'll have the tow from Frazier in front. Both cars going on the push to pass to try and defend or attack, as it were, side by side in towards the old turn 1. Through Copse, Blocker backs out just for now, but wait till they get into Stowe. I think that move is forthcoming.
Now Blocker needs to nail his run through Beckett and Champ all the way through Megas, Beckett should say, to avoid some of the aero wash. He's trying to send it a little deeper, it looks like, to try and counteract that tightness. Going to take a little while, but he does have the top double toe that will really help him out here because of Frazier leading this group.
Neither driver on the push to pass this time around, but Morgan's going to have a look down into the inside of Frazier through that off-camber Stowe corner. A couple of cars locking up into Vale, and Morgan will have a lunge of his own. Frazier gives the position. Blocker sees the opportunity to sneak through as well. And this fight will continue as they start to work on to lap 10 of this 34-lap affair. We are into the pit stop window. Will we see Robert Malechka down this time around?
Compared to the strategies last year where drivers attempted to reach 11 to 12 laps, I think you can't really say it fully to that answer. I think some of the drivers will try to extend it, especially as you mentioned with the primary tire. Fuel window up to 13 expected. Remember, Adam Blocker stretched that fuel window out a little bit further than everybody else by about a lap per stint last year, which really led, in part, to the crazy finish in that race.
Pinheiro and Otis squabbling amongst themselves for 4th, while Bensi and Kalisto, another battle side by side in towards Copse, and Bensi's trying the up and under. Oh, wonderfully executed. If he can make it stick, does Kalisto give him space? Bensi has to back out of that one. Smart thinking. We'll have to wait for another opportunity to try and make that one happen. Let's grab a look at what happened between Blocker and Morgan on the opening lap, and let's slow it down. We got a couple of looks, but none of them really ideal. I get the feeling there's a bit of air between them. Blocker's all the way to the end. Oh, Blocker loops it by himself.
Yeah, that's the cold tires we've seen early on in the race. That factored in a lot there. Also was getting really tight at the very edge of the curbing. Here's a better look I think you'll see right here. He tries to run inside, just snaps around on the corner exit. Wonder if there's a bit of the weight jacker factor in maybe as well.
No weight jacker, don't forget, JP.
Right.
We're on the road courses, but I know what you mean. Now, there's something I did want to touch on at some point today, as Malechka, by the way, is 3.4 back from your race leader. Van der Sant hangs the rear end out as well. Malechka going 11 laps on this stint. Might expect him in, I think, this time around. Kraus, say goodbye to him. He's gone. He's just got to survive to grab a victory, his 3rd. in a row. In-car tools. You have the front and usually the rear anti-roll bar. You go stiff, you go loose, trying to dial in some understeer, some oversteer. However, today, the rear anti-roll bar is disconnected. Now, there are a couple of reasons why you would do that, but the main thing when you're a driver thinking about that, JP, is the fact that you don't have that rear anti-roll bar. Whatever the rear is doing, it will do throughout the course of the race.
Hence why I think that's pretty clear with what we've seen early on, where after the pit stops, we may see some of the repeat performances of the loop-de-loop, because it seems like, based on what we've seen with the combination of the cold tires and the full fuel load, it seems maybe it's a balance towards the back that may be shuffling and causing some of the snap. We have to see. And I think when you can take that consideration, absolutely, it's going to be difficult to adjust to that as a driver, where you might feel a lot of the comfortability pushing on and on, especially up to this pit window opening for Malechka the third. But once you get into the pit lane, you have to be able to be ready to be able to adjust to that very careful feeling for a couple laps.
Ryan Otis follows in Malechka, although he started on the black mark primary tire, so a bit early if you ask me for that 95 to be coming in, but it's all going to now be about the track position that these two find themselves rolling off into. Up on the jacks goes Malechka, up on the jacks goes Ryan Otis as well. 4 fresh Firestone tires and a full tank of fuel to go through the next 13 or so laps. Malechka is off nice and early, Otis off as well. Now, where do they feed out? That's the crucial question. Pit exit somewhat challenging here. You feed out directly into the path of the cars flying through the opening couple of corners. Malechka's got a car in front, but after that, got some clean air. He's over to the black mark primary tire.
Well, that timing of where he came out is a little bit intriguing as well, because it came out right in the heart of the pack as again Blocker involved in trouble, and again it's Aaron Morgan.
Now, was there contact? Because that was just where Ryan Otis had come out as well, so I was keeping an eye on it there, at least on the timing screen. I didn't see if there was contact, so we will grab a look at it with the all-seeing RaceSpot TV replay machine. So Otis has cold tires, remember this. So Blocker gets by, and then, oh, that's optimistic. This is frustration.
There was definitely not air between them, it looked like right there. I think you'll see right from above the perfect perspective. Blocker goes for the dive.
To be fair, I mean,
Morgan does turn down.
Yes, there's two, Blocker is aggressive. I'm not trying to say he's not, but, he's never alongside. Here's another look, and we'll go super slow-mo from up above. He's never alongside into the braking zone as Pinheiro, O'Brien are in. Morgan then doesn't think there's a car alongside, and by the time the spotter calls it out, it's probably too late for him to adjust that turn-in. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but race control, when you see one car have a penalty already, at least in my experience, they don't look at it very kindly when you get mixed up in more shenanigans.
With the exact same car, you were involved in contact with the first lap of the race, in the first sector of the race. We'll see how that's decided upon as this night goes on, absolutely. But right now, I think the rest of the drivers showing a little bit of that same strategy feel from last year, trying to stretch around to about 13, 14 laps. Kraus amongst those who really saved a little bit before the tire fall-off switch to his favor. He's got the 6-second gap in blowing to Van de Sande and company.
He didn't force the issue, that is for sure. You'll take a look at the steering wheel, by the way. You can see left-hand side of the numbers, there are 6 numbers across the bottom. The very right-hand side is your position. Next to that is your fuel mileage, not populated for us. And alongside that would be your weight jacker. Then you see that crucial, as we break out the yellow pen, that's your push-to-pass count. So that's where drivers are able to track how many of those 10 additional 70 horsepower spurts they've got left. Alongside that, your front and rear anti-roll bars, again, not shared, to make sure there's no secrets being spread amongst the community as Phil Kraus will work his way into pit lane. I think the muscle man might just have been muscled around potentially, but the field should be in this time around, JP.
Top 3, in fact, all peeling into the pit lane. This is around the top of that estimated fuel window. You know how difficult it can be to even save the half lap at a big track such as this in the distance of nearly 4 miles. See where Kraus cycles around and what tire compound he puts on here. It's going to be the interesting thing. Compare that, keep in mind, to what was seen from Malechka the third. He's on the primary. It looks like Kraus off and away, stays on the black wall.
One of the longer pit stops that we've seen, 9.5 in the box, but has a comfortable margin at the front, is Malechka will take back second place from Alexander Van der Sande, at least for the time being. Connor Harrington coming out into the midst of a battle that also sees Ryan Otis there. They'll be alongside down into the village loop as Harrington muscles his way on through, but those tires still coming up into their optimal window. He'll have to watch out to not loop it around. Gets a little bit tight coming through onto the Wellington straight, but holds on for now.
And I think the difference is massive differences, we should say, compared to from this year's race compared to what we've seen on the road course last year is really becoming prevalent at Silverstone. Because remember, it was near the exact opposite strategy at this racetrack last year with the knowing, even with the tire degradation. It seems like just about everybody knowing how fast the tires were burning at Long Beach and knowing how the tire compounds and changed in general, they're a little more timid on trying to risk it until the end of the race. And I think that's the critical thing, trying to minimize the amount of time to maybe 8 or 7 laps, which guess what, is outside that, just at the very edge of that fall-off window we described.
Let's have a look at what happened to that muscle man moment down in towards Brooklyn. So he's alongside with Brian Beard, just overcooks it into the entry, locks the left front and has to lock that car down to avoid spinning it around and losing even more time. There's Otis jinking back and forth as Connor Harrington goes on the push to pass to try and pull away a little bit and defend. Connor Harrington, 9.9 seconds, the longest pit stop of all other than Brian Carey, who had a 10-second pit stop in this first cycle of the race. You saw a look on the left side of your screen a couple of moments ago about tire compound choices. Michael O'Brien loses out to Matt Taylor into the Vale chicane, but only a couple of cars have switched over to the red alternate tires. This is much more in line with what we tend to see in the real world, JP, where those black primary tires, especially at the higher speed courses, tend to be the preferred option. In the past, you've tended to see those red mark tires, at least on iRacing, be where drivers tend to gravitate.
Especially since the Blackwell tires usually did not have any overlapping tire or lap differences or lap markers, it seemed, compared from last year, should say. This year, it's been much more drastic, the fall off with the reds, and I think that's going to have a major impact the rest of the season, where I think we'll see a lot of black, red maybe for the rest of the way in terms of the tire wall colors.
Bomber's back, lost out to Blocker, now loses out to the Candyman, who's trying to pickpocket him for all he's worth. Here comes Tyler Graf, ducking and diving as well, and on the push to pass, 3 wide on the run down into Brooklyn's. Graf gets 2. The Candyman does manage to get in front for a moment, but Bomber's back, powers his way through the corner, will have the outside line as he gets a little bit squirrely. Here comes Brian Beard as well. This is a great fighting, but they're outside of the top 20.
I thought Bomber's back was about to loop it right in front of Brian Beard there, absolutely on edge once again with the lack of grip in the rear tires, it seems. Keep in mind, the clouds above the track going to really cool it down as well as the air conditions. But now you have to be able to keep it calm. Don't anger these tires, especially knowing you need to stretch these out. And it could get even worse once you make that switch in the pit window. There goes one of the red wall compound tires nearly off the track.
Yeah, Matt Taylor knows he's got to make hay while the sun is shining on those alternate tires and trying to back up his performance to a podium performance last year at Silverstone, his best finish in IndyCar competition. He's up to 6th and past the Lionheart Retro Series champion for 2020, Ryan Otis. Remember, it was a tumultuous end to Matt Taylor's Lionheart Retro Series year last year, fighting for the title, losing out on countback. He and Aaron Morgan were tied on points. When all things were said and done, the final chapter was written. We had an epilogue as race control worked and endeavored to figure out the points situation. Andrew Quintella jumps on the button himself as he tries to close on Mike Razmas in towards Brooklyn. He'll go a little bit deep. It's another car that's on those red mark alternate tires.
Him trying to pace himself too at the moment, and keep in mind, he's got a lot of experience, let's say, building a lot of these cars. Wouldn't be surprised to see him know a little bit in terms of risking some of the strategies and feeling things out, going more the traditional route. These calls, you can see the flow and how things are faring. Lots of push to pass in the bank as well. Still 6 on hand. This race this year, a lot of drivers trying to bank those even more so, it seems. Not too many I've noticed have lit up like a Christmas tree this time.
You do have to ration them out, that's for sure. Kinsella, though, has now burned through another one. I think he, again, just like with Matt Taylor, knows that the red tires are only good at the start compared to the blacks. He'll jink back and forth, and Mike Razmas fades at the very last moment to hold off for now. In towards Vale they'll come. Kinsella with that up and under gets a slightly better run into the corner. Rasmus covers him off and, at least for the time being, holds off. Here comes the battle for second, and Van der Sande has already punched his ticket to second. Not shocked to see this. Remember, Malechka's already used the red mark tire. Van der Sande will switch over to them for the final stint of the race. Malechka, I was talking to him pre-race, was not feeling so confident about his chances. He has speed, and we've seen that today. He has speed at Silverstone, but his difficulty has always been managing the tires over the course of the race. He's gotten past the reds, he's on the blacks. Now he can calm down, settle into a rhythm. 3.5 seconds back is Pinheiro and Harrington.
Yeah, the major thing, though, on top of things with that difference in lap times, Malechka, right now on average, a second a lap slower currently compared to Philip Kraus. Absolutely big difference, I think, right now in the past 5 laps. And for Philip Kraus, he's in the driver's seat to try and control things out as long as he doesn't make too many mistakes in this race right now. But there's a lot that can happen, let's put it that way, with half of the distance to go. And drivers like Matt Taylor trying to get fastest lap still, despite slipping and sliding on the reds.
Yeah, it was a 44.09, so not as fast as what we saw last year, or actually the race lap record was faster than the qualifying lap record. Alexis Newsom, a 1:39.103 is your race lap record, but we'll track that and see how it shakes up as we get past the halfway point of this race. Phil Kraus leads out of the final corner to come across the line to complete lap 17. 5.5 seconds clear of the rest of the field. The battle for fourth is an interesting one. Pinheiro, like JP mentioned, closing about a half a second a lap on Malechka in front. He's got Harrington, Taylor for company behind, and not far off them is Ryan Otis and Michael O'Brien. A little bit further back, though, is Mike Rasmus as they work their way into the Village Loop, a section that was added just over a decade ago. Mixed opinions from those in Britain about this change to Silverstone. I'm one that likes the changes, don't get me wrong, but we lost some of the classic corners that just identified Silverstone as Silverstone for me. But the benefit of iRacing is that the old version continues to live on. So if you want to relive the glory days, break out the old Williams FW31 that we have here on the sim, you can always just jump onto iRacing and enjoy yourself a little bit of time. We've got 3 eras of Formula One cars now. We've got the old Williams FW31, those screaming engines, then the first of the hybrid era cars with the GP2 engine, the McLaren. The less said about that, probably the better. And of course, one of the best cars in all of Formula One history, a Mercedes 2021 era Formula One car. We'll see the 2022 car come to iRacing at some point in the near future, although I'm sure those who are following this year's 2022 Formula One action probably don't want to experience the joy that is porpoising. 3.3 seconds the gap between Pinheiro and Malechka. And another thing I kind of wanted to talk about here today, Justin, was that history book and the fact that there are 22 drivers, or 22 occasions, I should say, where drivers have won 2 races in a row. 12 drivers have managed to do that. Only one has gone further. Adam Blocker has won 3 in a row. He's also won 5 in a row. And that streak actually ended here last year. It was the final of the 5 victories that he got. Phil Kraus has started this season off so incredibly strong. He's looking on course to make it 3 in a row, tying Blocker second most consecutive wins here in Lionheart IndyCar competition.
Kraus, I think, in particular, has cleaned up a lot of the stuff on the oval side in particular, because Kraus, when he joined the series last year, past the halfway mark or so, he was a contender on all the road courses. Always traded spots back and forth with Blocker, in particular with the different strategies. Phillip Island in particular, where he tried to win on said island, was one of the best examples where he tried a different compound at the end of the race, couldn't hold on and defend at the very end, though, compared to the strategy Blocker and company had chosen that day. I think this year, though, he's fixed some of the issues he had, in particular when it comes to the bigger tracks, the speedways, where he really struggled to keep himself clean. Yes, he picked up some strong finishes last year at them, but was inconsistent at times with them. This year, he's cleaned up the consistency, and the luck's gone his way in turn as well.
Corrected by a viewer in our YouTube chat. 4 eras of Formula One cars. Well, technically 5. I'm going to correct. the correction. The Lotus 79, of course, which you'll see tomorrow in Lionheart Retro Series action, is the fourth era of Formula One. But we've got the Lotus 49 as well, the very old school Formula One beast that, again, is a dominant car in the Formula One history books. Stringing out for now. Sorry, go ahead, JP.
Technically, it's 5 eras with the Lotus 49, too, is it not?
That's what I said. That's what I was saying. I was correcting the correction.
Okay.
But it is stringing out now. Malechka on the button trying to close the gap to Van der Sande. Comments from the drivers in the build-up to this race didn't indicate that maybe we would see DRS trains in effect, where basically you get in the drafting toe, there's not much you can do, and it does seem like it's settling into that kind of rhythm right now. You see Matt Taylor on those red tires, for example, really not closing anymore. He's about 6/10 back from Connor Harrington.
Now, right now, I think Taylor in particular trying to really fight with those tire wear differences right now, and I think we're approaching that mark of the run where Taylor is really going to struggle to keep up right now. We've seen how difficult it was for him in the heart of this group before. This was where before it was Malechka the third who really fell off the cliff tire wear-wise. But if Taylor's figured out a way to save a little bit to be able to at least maintain the draft for Arjuna, I think he's in an okay spot towards the final stages. We're approaching the opening of the final pit window.
More than halfway through the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Silverstone presented by MOZA Racing. It's been absolute chaos and carnage to start this race off, but it's settled into a rhythm. Phil Kraus leads. We're going to step away for a couple of moments' time. We'll be back with a run to the checkered flag.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to RaceSpot TV and 2022 Lionheart IndyCar Series coverage. We're here at the home of British Motorsports for the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Silverstone presented by MOZA Racing. Hello everyone, alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati, the one and only Justin Prince is on hand to see what has been, well, can we call it dramatic? Can we call it chaotic? I think there aren't enough adjectives to describe what we've seen here today, Justin. The opening couple of laps, well, it was Adam Blocker's struggles that defined the opening portions of this race, and Philip Kraus leads by 7 seconds, one hand on the victory here as we get our way closer and closer to the final pit stop cycle of the race.
Especially since he's grown the gap now between him and second to 7 seconds. And other drivers who we expected to be up towards the front, well, they haven't been able to keep up with his pace regardless. Connor Harrington, for example, 4/10 off last time by there at the stripe. Even with the draft and even with the battle with Pinheiro going on to factor in, Philip Kraus has been doing Philip Kraus things to build his house and build his claim to this track.
We've been watching Connor Harrington just try and find a way as we were with that Race Spot TV side by side, but Pinheiro, not so much a roadblock, but I think just that draft lock in effect is really starting to cause some issues for these cars. They haven't really closed either on Robert Malechka, talking a couple of tenths here and there. That gap's still about 3 full seconds, so Malechka's not in a terrible spot, although, as we mentioned, the tire strategies, I should say, are going to swap around. Malechka, the only car inside of the top 5 to have used the red mark alternate tires to start this race off, and all teams, all drivers required to use both of the tire compounds in today's race. So you'll see Pinheiro, Harrington, Van der Zandt, Kraus all switching to that slightly grippier but slightly softer and less durable red mark alternate tire. Matt Taylor has now started to fall off, you can see, as they work on to the hangar straight. 2 seconds the gap between him and Harrington, into the clutches potentially of Ryan Otis. Working lap 23, about to be lap 24, so you can pit from here and make it to the end. You realistically want to go a little bit longer unless you're a driver on the slightly worse compound of tires. Matt Taylor pits. More interestingly, Robert Malechka comes onto pit road.
I'm curious if he elects to go with the reds like I'm thinking he may lean towards where he started. I don't know how this could play out though, because he'll need to make up a lot of time on that compound if he does roll that dice like that. Don't see a change though, maybe? Yes, now it's on the reds. There he goes. He is doing that haul. He took a little longer in the stall though, 8.9 seconds off the jacks.
Now, again, we mentioned this earlier, conditions. We thought it would cool off. It hasn't really, and that's mainly because the cloud cover that was there for parts of practice and qualifying has dissipated. It is a very, very clear day up above. You can see a couple of clouds here and there, but Malechka gambling on the red mark tire. He would be one of the only cars to have used the alternate tire for 2 stints in today's race. Plenty of other cars down onto pit road this time around, not just Taylor and Malechka, but Frazier and Bomber's back as well, along with Paul Jenkins, all pitting for the final time in today's race. Harrington still on the back of Adriano Pinheiro as he squabbles for 3rd and 4th position. We've also got a look at a battle, I think, with Tony Schowen and Paul Jenkins, but they're fighting 1 lap down, not really fighting for major points. The real battle that I'm keeping an eye on is this one, where Kinsella on the red mark alternate tire starting to come under fire from Caleb Bensi and Lionel Callisto.
Heading this time by, he's just indicated to his fellow competitors. We'll see if anyone elects to fall through on with him. And you can see some of the drivers thinking about lunges. They have to be considerate, though, of what's going to happen to the right of them right here. And it looks like Callisto, all of them want to go in. How will this fare for the brakes?
It's dangerous. This is a dangerous pit entry. And Kinsella locks up. Has he sped? We'll find out shortly. One thing to note with the pit stop and the pit lane speed limit is that it's been increased. When we came here last year, it was much, much slower, but it has gotten a bit of a bump up to the real-world Formula One levels. So in tie-in with that Mercedes partnership, the change there was also put into place. Luis Gonzalez Nunez has had to take the toe back onto pit lane. Kinsella rolls off behind Lionel Callisto, but crucially does not get held in that box for longer because there is no pit stop speeding penalty.
So I think lost the spot because he overran the stall, lost him about half the second. Now, battle I think is going to keep on intensifying, possibly for these top 5 positions. Of note, Kraus is still trying to go further. He can go about another couple laps. Malechka 3rd, 30 seconds behind. The net lane time has been around 32 seconds. However, you have to also consider that entry cuts a lot of the final chicanes down, so that isn't completely a finite science in that delta in lane today.
Yeah, no, I try not to do the math there because it's somewhat complicated. Mike Razmaster 68 on the button as he tries to work his way through these final stages of this second stint of the race. Confirmation as well. Remember, you have to use both compounds of tires. Plenty of drivers have elected to use the black primaries to start these opening 2 stints. Only Malechka, 2 stints on the red marked tire. Matt Taylor has gone to the reds as well, so he's another driver that's gambling and electing to do 2 of the stints on the reds. Connor Harrington is trying to get the overcut working here. 141.116 for him last time around. Don't think that's going to work out. Adriano Pinheiro punched in a 139.447 the last time he did a full lap. I guess that did include the shortcut, so can't read too much into that.
Yeah, right now I think that's a little concerning for Harrington, but not a panic moment. Malechka the third, I think, though, is going to really feel the pain of this respective run towards the final couple laps, and whoever he ends up jumping to the cycle, he'll have to go into major defense mode for. We already seen when he came out of the pit lane, he already knew how bad the cold tires have been. Trying to beat and wobble blocker again, Weeble wobbles.
Now, does he get on the button? He has still got 8 push to pass his left. So does Ryan Otis, though. He's got 7. Blocker is yet to box, though. So Blocker is due for a pit stop. Should work his way down the pylon when all things are said and done. Inside the top 9 for now. Would expect him to drop potentially just inside the top 20 if he's lucky. And that is a big, big if. Tony Schowen getting out of the way, nice and courteous from the lapped car. Let's have a look at what happened to Luis Gonzalez Nunez. So, oh, that looks like technical failure.
That is massive technical failure if you blow through the chicane and then have it loop around like that when you hit the grass.
Yeah, you can see he's stuck in 5th. He's not steering as well. Hellacious impact for the SimRace247 car, as you can just see. And what happens here? He's just on the grass, doesn't have any control of that car, and by the time he gets it back, it's already too late. That car is done for the day. Phil Krause, Van der Sant, Harrington, all boxing this time around, and this is an important stop, especially for Connor Harrington. We'd expect Van der Sant to come out alongside Malechka. Where is the 91? There he comes. Van der Sant's already in front, so that's maybe a good sign. Pinheiro, though, well and truly clear of the 44.
The undercut might have been the way to go a little bit compared to your competitors here if you're going primary to primary. But we'll have to see how the tire wear falls around for Pinheiro compared to Harrington towards the end of the run. Not expecting too much fall off, though. We'll have to wait and see how a couple laps difference can be, because most of the time, drivers haven't had to hold off drivers with that split today. The more concerning part will be how the 91 and Malechka the third fares out. Pinheiro's got a great chance to rip away the podium here for the 91 car if he can keep up with them and in turn jump past him in the final 5 laps here.
He was 1.3 seconds faster than Malechka last time around. I think a mistake from that 91 car coming into play. Do remember as well, Harrington at the very end of this race will have very fresh tires in comparison to those around him. We'll have to wait and see how that really plays out when all things are said and done and the final chapter of today's race is written down in the history books. Jay Brandt on the back of Caleb Bensi. Bensi's worked himself up 10 positions. Talked about the good season he's had so far. He's showing some good speed today as well.
Up 7 positions indeed, and has kept himself out of trouble. He's been around some of the trouble, but he's been able to avoid contact with it. Letting off an air driver in Jay Brand, who's picked up a few spots, 21st to 16th throughout the day today.
Adriano Pinheiro off the road, another mistake. He did this at Long Beach. He's done it at Silverstone as well. Does this give Robert Malechka the chance to hold on to his podium spot? The Brazilian will be gutted with that mistake.
Just looked like it locked itself up even before the tire smoke started to kick up, went a little bit deep in the braking zone. And he just couldn't get the car to rotate, trying to slam on the brakes when he realized he was going to miss it. It slid off to the sand and absolutely gut-punching. If you're Pinheiro with a chance at the podium, here's a look at the replay to show exactly that. See him missing a little bit of the braking mark in the apex, locks it up to avoid sending it completely to the sand, still goes into it.
Have a look on board from his vantage point. He's just too deep. He's blown past the braking zone there, and oh, gut-wrenching, to say the very least. He drops now back to 7th spot. Will be about 6/10 clear of Mike Rasmussen if Caleb Bensi just gets past Kinsella. They're still side by side. Here comes Jay Brandt to join the party as well as they work themselves down the old pitch straightaway. Bensi and Brandt both on the button. Kinsella blocks all the way to the wall into Copse. They go side by side, and Caleb Bensi powers around the outside.
Very close to running right off into the space there. Kinsella, though, is in a prime spot if he can keep up with the good throttle. There he goes!
Jay Brandt on the black tires absolutely sent it into Maggots and Beckett, and he's spun himself around, and I can't exactly... Yep, he's got damage. That's day done, I think, for Jay Brandt in the 15. Was looking like a very good day for him.
Looked like he was a little more comfortable through the throttle compared to Kinsella. Maybe wasn't expecting the check with some of the aero wash being hit with the 41. Absolutely critical for what was a solid run for Jay Brandt. He throws it away there, but the battle is still on. Looks like Kinsella not impacted from it.
Wow, ooh, take a breath, it's heating up again. Let's work through this entire sequence, and let's start here at Luffield, where you can see Brandt almost mere inches away from running into the back of Caleb Bensi. I want to see what happens here. Down in towards a Copse corner. How aggressive is the block? It's a bit reactionary if you ask me. Then let's give full props to Caleb Bensi's confidence and commitment around the outside. Now what happens here? Kinsella's tires surely aren't that worn. I think he was maybe just trying to set up and hang back a little bit, and Jay Brandt, well, not much he could do once he was so committed to the corner.
Yeah, mentioned the aero wash being a major factor with these cars at a lot of the circuits. Kinsella looked like indeed trying to avoid some of that and circumvent that with backing up the corner, get a better run on exit. After all, the saying by some is slow in, fast out. Brandt was more so taking the line of fast in, trying to go fast out, and I don't think was expecting a bit of that checkup at that moment with how aggressive they were racing, especially that block down the straightaway.
On board with Connor Harrington, who's already close to the back of Malechka's 91 car. Those red tires falling and plummeting off the cliff as Harrington into the final couple of corners sees Malechka lock up. The left front will be screaming in agony. 3/10, just under 3/10 splits these two cars. Don't think this battle's going to be long in the making. Malechka's feeling the pressure so much, he uses the push to pass in towards turn number 1.
That push to pass helped them nearly push all the way to the edge of the runoff area there for a split second. But I think the advantage is right now in the window possibly for Harrington, especially with a comfortability like that.
Oh, but he's going to try the up and under as Malechka. Does he get back on the button? He doesn't. Harrington's the one that uses that 70 horsepower spurt. We talk about this all the time. It's not just about passing, it's about defending as well. And Harrington, at the very least, will work himself back up into third. Remember, started on the outside of the front row. At least looking like he'll secure a podium position in 5 or so laps time. Take a breath, take a breather. I think we've calmed down, at least for the time being. Let's have a look back at Andrew Kinsella. I did want to say as well, Kinsella's only a couple of weeks away from becoming a married man, and if his fiancée Sophia is watching, Sophia, shout out to you. You have to put up with Andrew's commentary as well, especially the back-to-back Monday nights that he's got, where he goes from IndyCar Open action here on RaceSpot straight into Lionheart Speedway Series competition. We wish both of you the best of luck in the future. Right behind them, quietly, Alexis Newsom in that 53 car. 5 positions gained, another strong showing at Silverstone. Remember, this is where she made her debut midway through 2021.
Last year when it came to Alexis Newsom, she ran around the back end of the top 20 or in the 20s after some attrition points last year. I think finishing in the garage area as well in the paddock. But this has been a very big improvement, I think, for Alexis Newsom. Jacob Oster on the box for Alexis Newsom, I think, maybe a major help with that. Be able to learn this circuit. A lot more confidence, it seems, in being able to attack the corners. Yes, there's still a lot of struggle points I've noticed with her, in particular with some of the overruns of some of the corners. But a lot more comfortable, it seems, compared to when her debut was last year.
I think part of that as well, of course, she's representing factory backed in this series, but she's joined up with the Team I5G, one of the most successful teams in iRacing IndyCar competition, working along the likes of, like you mentioned, Jacob Oster, but also Brandon Traino, the 3-time iRacing Indy 500 winner, even Zach Campbell, Christopher Demerit, Brendan Lichtenberg, Matt Pavelski, and hopefully I haven't missed any names there because I'll be getting some angry fan mail when all things are said and done. But enjoying this forward progress from Alexis Newsom, not just quick on the ovals, of course, but quick on the road courses as well. One win to Alexis Newsom's name came at Chicagoland, the back end of 2021. Malechka's now 2 seconds or so away from Harrington. Should be comfortably clear of Matt Taylor, so at least we'll get a 4th position when all things are said for him at the end of this race. Phil Krause, we talked about how comfortable he was. He's stolen the fastest lap of this race, and I tell you what, he set a lap record as well, a 1:39.041. He's stolen the record away from Alexis Newsom.
Krause in a great position, I will give him credit right now, and it's been a near perfect drive for the 19, starting up from the pole position. A lot of the drivers, yes, who he was expected to battle with, had a lot of the troubles, but stayed calm even in the face of the battle with Malechka the third with the strategies. New big picture was the critical point. Or else it's just a matter of 2.5 laps to close it forward. Keep in mind for drivers like Pinheiro and company, recovery drive still on the wings and the onsets, possibly. Ryan Otis, he's also had some aggressive battles with the timing of his pit stops. He's looking a little hungry. Remember, he finished really well here in the past as well.
Yeah, just behind this, you got Pinheiro and Razmas closing, so it might be a 4-way fight for a finish inside of the top 5. Matt Taylor's down to just 1 push to pass left in today's race, but with just a couple of laps to go when they get back to the stripe this time around, not in the worst position, although having said that, Otis, Pinheiro, 4-5 push to passes respectively. Mike Razmas has the most in the bank with 6 usages of the spurts left, and the benefit for him, he's also able to use the toe of Pinheiro to save those push to passes to the end. There are a couple of long straights, the Wellington and the Hanger straight, of course, but the Sir Lewis Hamilton straight, the pit straight is an opportunity like Malechka showed to use the push to pass as well, the run into Maggotts and Beckett's. The more you've got in the bank, the better you're looking. I think Mike Razmas will be fancying his chances of juking it out to potentially get up to 5th.
Yeah, this is one of his strength type of tracks, in my opinion, road course-wise, I should say, because remember, he was always competitive inside the top 5 last year in 2021 on the road courses. Silverstone, he performed fairly well at. Also was in the mix for the top 5 as well. With all the craziness, also finished, I believe, amongst the top 4. And this race has been, I think, a bit of a bounce back to what's been a very quiet year for Ryan Otis, where he hasn't been started off as strong on the road course here today compared to how he did last year. A performance like this today, I think, will help be able to build momentum with a lap and a half to go and a chance for him to try and get another top 5 in his belt for the former retro champion.
It is a 4-way fight now officially. Pinheiro, Razmas into the draft. We're getting word from race control as well that we talked about the incident limit earlier. Adam Blocker is at 19 incidents. Remember, each car contact that you have is anywhere from 2 to 4. And he's had plenty of car contacts today. He's at 19. If he gets an extra one, he will serve a drive-through penalty. He cannot afford for that to happen because he is sitting in 14th place, and the pit delta for the drive-through penalty is probably around 15 to 20 seconds. He's only 38 seconds away from your leader, so it could be worse. It could be a lot better for sure, but I think when all things are said and done, after Adam Blocker reflects on the position he was in 7 laps into this race, JP, he might not be ultra disappointed. It's been a strong recovery from him after that.
Now, a lot of drivers have a big-time struggle to even recover from at least one bit of major contact. He's lucky, I will say, to be able to keep on chugging along in this race. Just needs to stay within the colored lines and within the markers around the track for one more lap. White flag waves.
Phil Krause will take the white flag this time around as through turns 1 and 2 he goes. Has not looked back since the start of the race. Bided his time, waited for Malechka's tires to wear off. Dominant drive from Phil Krause on the way to 3 victories in a row. 6 odd kilometers left in this battle for 5th. Taylor, I think, is just about looking like he might hold on. Otis in the picture. Pinheiro, Razmas a little bit too far behind. I think Razmas now with 1 lap to go. Best he's really looking at is 7th spot.
We haven't really talked about Mike Rasmus either today. And remember, he was a contender at this track in the Retro Series last year when they went to Silverstone. This could be pretty busy with a few of the Retro Series veterans finding months here.
He made a mistake. He's fallen off Taylor and into the clutches of Pinheiro. Just 6/10 splits him from Pinheiro behind, so this is crucial. Otis has got to now be picture perfect. Just one push to pass left. Pinheiro's got two at his disposal. Newsom gets past Kinsella down the Wellington Straight, so Kinsella will drop to 13th spot in what has been an up and down day. He's been running up at the front for portions of the race, but at least for now, we'll settle back into line and ride to the checkered flag as Kite Bomber's back is very wide through the village section, and his Ascari Autosport teammate Mitchell Riggs will work his way past into 23rd position. But at the front of the field, Phil Krause goes 3 in a row. He's only been bested once, and you could argue he deserved victory on the streets of Long Beach. What a start to the year it's been for Philip Krause and the private label Team Hype Car as he wins the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Silverstone, presented by MOZA Racing. Utter domination from this man as he looks to try and best the undisputed king of Lionheart, Adam Blocker. It's looking like it might just go his way. Alexander Van der Sant will come across the line in second, with Connor Harrington rounding out the podium positions. No change in the battle for fifth. Taylor from Otis, from Pinheiro, from Rasmus. And all things are said and done. What can you say about Phil Krause? 2021 JP, we were talking about Adam Blocker finishing on average inside of the podium positions. Phil Krause, with 5 races done, his lowest finish is a second.
Unbelievable start to the season for Philip Krause. Near picture perfect, in fact, you can say. And we know the saying where it's family's house for Philip Krause. He's been able to build a stake in a house, so to speak, at victory lane just about every time he's been in contention here. I think right now he's proving that if you have Adam Blocker as the king of Lionheart, Philip Krause is one of those who can build his way into that battle for the crown.
Malashka does hold on to fourth, and all things are said and done as well, so a good performance on the road course for him. I think that is very much a sign of what to expect from the 91, potentially and hopefully in the road courses in the future. What a day for Phil Krause. Does he have enough fuel to do some victory donuts? We'll have to wait and see, but as he slows himself down at Copse, I think that might be... Oh, there we go. He uses the old pit straight. Doesn't want to do the 6-kilometer round trip back to the start-finish line. Good place to do a couple of victory donuts, something he is becoming very, very familiar with. Here's a look, though, at your SimRace247 results in the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Silverstone. Phil Krause, 7.5 seconds clear, while the rest of the field never looks back, and Krause, in the middle of a move, comfortable on his way to victory lane. Alexander Van der Sant grabs another second spot for Powerslide Adrenaline. A good drive from the 96 car as he works to try and build up some championship momentum, matches the second place that he got to kick off the season. Connor Harrington completes the podium for the private label Team Hype, while Malechka is in fourth and Matt Taylor through the top 5. Ryan Otis, Pinheiro, Rasmus, O'Brien and Callisto complete the top 10, 31 seconds splitting first from 10th. Caleb Benzie in 11th with Alexis Newsom hot on his heels, Andrew Kinsella in 13th, and a disappointing day for the Powerslide Adrenaline team. Adam Blocker, after the nightmare of a start, will he stay there? There's plenty of things that race control might still have a look at, but we'll wait and see post-race. These results very much unofficial. Matthias Kraus through the top 15 before the Alcantech NHR duo of Stefan Larkham and Andrew Marquez sit 16th and 17th. Tyler Graf in 18th. In the number 98 car, Brian Beard and Alex Guyon through the top 20. Adam Frazier and Matt Houston 21st and 22nd, while the Ascari Autosport duo Mitchell Riggs and Kite Bombersback sit 23rd and 24th. Dustin Wardlow, Brian Carey, Jason Brophy, Chris Fowler and Chris Lanini, the final cars on the leading lap. Paul Jenkins is in 30th position with AJ Musselman, Mike Rigney, James Brunt and Tony Showen, the final finishers. Just 3 cars not making it to the end. Luis Gonzalez Nunez in the self-incident that we saw the technical failure for him. Aaron Morgan, multiple incidents with Adam Blocker, drops him out of contention. He'll be distraught
especially given that this is a track that he historically has done well at and clearly had the pace. Barrett Rolfe retired after lap number 1, and the fastest lap does go to the man that took victory here today, Philip Kraus, a 1:39.041. Multiple records going his way, the qualifying record as well as the race lap record. And that tidies off our 5th round of the Lionheart Racing Series and leads us into our HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloudline of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows that we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. And let's go straight down to HyperX Victory Lane, where Philip Kraus is chatting with his competition. But there wasn't much competition for you today, Phil. You bided your time in the early stages of that race. You waited for Malechka's red tires to give up, and from there, no competition, nothing in your mirrors.
Yeah, it was another race that went perfectly planned for me, at least. After the initial start, when Rob got back behind me on the, I think it was start of lap 2 or 3, somewhere around there. It was like, when I got around to lap 5, I was like, is his tires gonna fall off? Because I was just chilling behind him, saving a bit of fuel so I could run an extra lap on the first stint, and his tires didn't seem like they were falling off that bad. And then next lap they just fall off the cliff, because I knew from practice mine usually fell off like lap 4 or so, and he managed to stretch his an extra 2 laps. So I was a little worried about that at first, but once his tires fell off, it was pretty much cruise control the rest of the way, just managing the gap to Alex, being careful on my pit entries, contrary to last race at Pocono. But yeah, just being careful, and I was even too careful in the last stop. I stopped short in my box.
It didn't seem to stop you, and I mean, talk to us about those tire compound choices. A couple of cars decided to do 2 stints on the reds, but you know, in the previous meta with this IndyCar has been that the alternates have been the preferred option. I think today was one of the first times in Lionheart competition that it's flip-flopped around. What are your thoughts on how things look for the remaining road courses this year?
Yeah, definitely. The reds usually are the favorite tire, but I believe iRacing in the last build, maybe 2 builds ago, they put a bit more emphasis on making the black tire more viable, and they definitely achieved it on these high-load, high-speed tracks like Silverstone, and you can feel it, because the reds just give out, and like one lap you have grip, next lap you have nothing, where the blacks, I felt like, were pretty consistent throughout the entire run. You could run the same lap times from lap 1 to lap 12 of a stint, and the alternates, you definitely had to change your driving style a lot more as the run went on, because at the start of the run you had like infinite rear grip, and then lap 3, lap 4, and onwards you pretty much had nothing, and you had to really pedal it out of some of the corners.
I mean, I don't want to jinx you, Phil, so I'm going to choose my words carefully there, but it's almost been the perfect start to the year. If not for your one mistake at Long Beach, you could have been 5 of 5. Now, you've got 3 in a row. You're on the road to besting potentially Blocker's record of 5 wins in a row, but I mean, I always say you make your own luck. What's the secret been this year to your success?
I wish I could tell you, because this race and the race before have been really hectic for me. Obviously, Pocono, I was racing from a hotel room, and here, I had just moved into my new house yesterday, so, you know, it's been really hectic these last 2 races, but honestly, for either of them, I wasn't sure. Like, it was a coin toss if I was going to be able to race at Pocono. Here, it was more like a 70, 75, 25, but, like, it's been really hectic these last few weeks, and definitely really lucky to be able to pull these races out and get the results that I'm not sure I'd say I deserve, but I feel like I've been really lucky to start this season, because I've been able to capitalize when other people make mistakes, and I got to thank all the private label team Ethica guys, Connor Harrington, Jason Broker. They really helped me out, and we had a special guest, Tommy Milner, engineering in the race, and really appreciate him stopping by and helping us out.
Well, your team owner's going to be smiling with that one, that's for sure. Congratulations, Phil. We'll see you in a week's time from Nashville. I think the field was hoping that you weren't completing that move by today and they would have had a chance.
Thank you, Arjuna. Maybe I'll...
That was Phil Kraus. Cut off rudely there. We do apologize, but we work our way to the second step of the podium, where we find Alexander Van der Sant for the second time this year. Alex, I mean, crazy start to the race, and you worked your way through some of that. What were you thinking on lap 1 as your teammate had a bit of contact, lost it, and then had some contact with Aaron Morgan?
Yeah, that was pretty terrifying. Just got through it and went on from there. I mean, I didn't have time really to think about it or react to it. I just swerved and got out of it. But yeah, fun race. Sort of. Those tires were tough at the end. I should have executed better on those in laps because I was gaining a lot of time otherwise. But yeah, just wish I had a bit more for Phil. I owe Rob Belechka a beer or something because like him letting me by there to try and do something to catch Phil, but it didn't really work out in the end. But yeah, overall really happy with another podium. Wish it was a win, but it's good team points today.
Let's talk about the next race. We're going to Nashville. What are your thoughts on that? A first in Lionheart competition.
I really like the track, at least for hot lapping. It's just really satisfying when you get in that groove and that rhythm. Honestly, the racing's gonna be tough. It's extremely hard to pass there, so it'll be about surviving, keeping your car out of the wall, and there's gonna be a lot of maybe interesting pit strategy there.
Oh, I like the sound of that. A final question for you, Alex, is, I mean, what do you need to get to the top step of the podium here? I mean, I think it's fair to say that before you joined Powerslide, the ovals were your specialty, but you've been getting quicker and quicker on the road courses. What's that next evolution that you're looking to make?
Yeah, I mean, today I had the luck. Well, sort of. I mean, I hate to say that because it was my teammates' bad luck, but yeah, I had the luck, just not the pace. So just needed a little more consistency, especially like in the middle to late stint where the fuel or like where the tires hadn't quite come back. So definitely something to work on there, and probably better qualifying too. If I had been ahead of that, I would have lost less time, and it would have been a bit easier to stay close to Phil. But yeah, really happy with the progress I've made this season.
Well, long may it continue. Congratulations on a second place finish this year, Alex, and hopefully it's not long before you're on the top step of that podium.
Thanks, guys.
From Alexander Van der Sant, we go to the second of the private label Team Hype cars. Justin Prince is standing by with Connor Harrington.
Well, for you, Connor, it started off well with qualifying. Top 2 with your teammate front row. And then the craziness seemed to start across the field, whether behind you or with yourself with Megas and Beckus. Why was it so difficult, it seemed, for a lot of the drivers, especially off the start of the run, to hold on to the grip with this car?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was anything to do with just the track surface in general, or just some people not gelling with the setup. But yeah, we just went for the break there in Maggots and Beckett's, and it just stepped out, and just really fortunate there to save it. You know, a crazy slowdown penalty, I think, honestly, is for that to lose. I think I ended up losing like 8 or 9 spots there. So yeah, a good recovery drive tonight. Really happy with the strategy we picked and the passes that we made tonight. So yeah, a good finish for ourselves for the points after a disappointing Pocono.
And we discussed a lot in bits of length when it comes to the tire differences compared to last year in the tire compound. Touched upon with Phil Cross in particular with the versatility of the Blackwell tires. Your opinion on the more tire degradation seen for the Reds compared to the Blacks this season that have almost flipped the script in terms of strategies?
Yeah, it just seems like a little bit different. That red tire just seems to switch on real fast, but just temperature is a real bear for it, and it just doesn't last very long. But it was interesting with the strategy. Finally, I actually managed to save a little bit of fuel on a road course and get the extra lap out of it, and I think that really helped us because we had by the time we came out of the pits, I think Rob in front of us, he had worn through the best of his tires. So, you know, if we just didn't get hung up behind Adriano for so long, who knows, we could have maybe had second tonight for a good recovery drive. But in that middle stint, I just couldn't do anything with Adriano. It didn't matter how close I got. He just had too much clean air. So even with the black tire, it still was difficult to stay close.
Now, the next track, it's worth discussing a bit. Arjuna asked this previously with Nashville next on the schedule. Here's the thing with Nashville. It's a concrete surface oval, just under a mile and a half, 1.33 miles. Of course, when it comes to the oval side of the service, tire management and tire heat, always a challenge when it comes to these cars and that type of surface on oval racing. How do you feel it's going to be now with Nashville, knowing the difficulties that may be ahead for the 1.33 mile circuit?
I mean, if you go back and look at the fixed and I think even Open went there from the official series. It did look like it didn't race very good. It looked like it was pretty much just if you had the clean air, you were gone, and then it just strung out and just turned into a conveyor belt. So who knows? Maybe they can do something funny with the setup and make it racy, make it packy. But it's a big flat track with not a lot of grip. And probably the wrong aero configuration from the sim. So who knows? It might race good, it might race bad, but everybody will be on the same setup, so we'll just have to drive it and can keep the momentum going.
We'll see how things fare out next week. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, guys.
Connor Harrington rounds out the top three, Arjuna.
Great to chat with our podium finishers again, and we thank them for their time. Well, we talked to the drivers about it. We're excited about another first for the Lionheart IndyCar Series. We go to this Nashville Speedway. You talked about it, just under 1.5 miles, a very interesting surface. We're not going to be racing under the night lights, don't worry. It will be a slightly warmer sort of a day, JP, but I think this is going to be a race. Survival, qualifying up front, your two keys to victory.
Well, first of all, it's not the fairgrounds, keep in mind. It's the other track in the Nashville region, the Super Speedway, that held a lot of momentous moments in the early 2000s in stock car racing. Now, when it comes to the Nashville Super Speedway, there's two keys to victory. And I think Connor Harrington mentioned that. Managing your tires because the concrete surface, but also trying to maximize track position. It's a pretty tight circuit where you want to try and stick around the bottom usually in the stock cars, and try and make sure you manage some of the bumps in particular. I think with the Dallara IR18, it's going to be very difficult, to say the least, for a first-time experience, especially since it's one of the first times, I believe, in Lionheart, it's a concrete oval we're on the schedule for.
Let's grab a look at that next level racing schedule very quickly before we wrap things up here. A week off, or rather, back-to-back races before we get a week off, and we'll go to the Watkins Glen track and then Phoenix back-to-back, Suzuka, Indianapolis, Mosport to complete the first half of the campaign. Of course, the first Triple Crown is done, JP. The next focus, I think, for a lot of these drivers will be the second one, and it's the big one. Everyone wants to win on the Brickyard.
So many big names have managed to come to victory lane when it comes to the Brickyard at the Indianapolis 500-mile race in the real world, and especially in the virtual world. And for when Lionheart does that same in about a month and a half's time, some of the top competitors will put a lot of stake and importance when it comes to qualifying, but also being able to make sure to manage the 500 miles. But to be able to secure yourself in a good spot heading towards that race in the points, you need to handle the concrete confines of Nashville. You need to handle a track that's known for a lot of intense racing in Watkins Glen at times. Phoenix, we know how difficult it is with the aero wash there. Suzuka, that one's going to be an intriguing one to me, I think, especially knowing some of the ebbs and flows can be a mixture of what we've seen, but also what we've seen at times with Silverstone tonight with some of the longer straights.
Been a fascinating first 5 rounds. We're getting into the meat of the season where if you want to be a championship contender, you've got to be consistent. No one has been more consistent than your winner here today, Philip Kraus. Before we wrap things up, we like to thank those that make all of this possible, starting with the title sponsor of the Lionheart IndyCar Series. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt-kicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. The tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com.
Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit www.nextlevelracing.com.
MOZA Racing is revolutionizing sim racing with the development of industry-leading hardware and software products. like their R9 direct drive wheelbase and GS steering wheel. Featuring zero-delay wireless technology and made from high-end materials, MOZA Racing delivers the precision you need to reach victory lane.
Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls. Precision built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com.
And it's not just them, but so many more that make this all possible. To learn more about the partners of the Lionheart Racing Series, visit LionheartRacingSeries.com and also keep up to date with the latest comings and goings in all 3 of the Lionheart sanctioned competitions. It's a busy week of Lionheart action. The Speedway Series was off on Monday, but the Retro Series is back tomorrow. We head for the Thunder Down Under, the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Phillip Island. You thought today was chaos. Well, if last year was any indication, Lotus 79's Phillip Island, a recipe for chaos. Live exclusively on RaceBot TV and in partnership, of course, with ESTV as well. Catch the action Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern and 7:05 p.m. Pacific. We will be back in a week's time, though, from the Nashville Speedway. Another first in Lionheart Racing Series competition. Phil Kraus is looking to match Adam Blocker, not just in the championship, but in the streak of consecutive victories. What will we see? You'll have to tune in to find out as we head to the Music City. For now, though, it is time to bid you farewell. On behalf of the entire team at RaceBot TV, for my co-commentator in Justin Prince, my name is Arjuna Kankipati, signing off for now. Can anyone stop Phil Kraus? Well, it's been an almighty start to the season. Will his luck hold on? There's still a long way to go until we close things out in the month of December at the Auto Club Speedway. Phil Kraus, though, wins the SimRace247 Grand Prix of Silverstone, presented by MOZA Racing in dramatic fashion. No competition today. What will we see in 7 days' time? We'll see you in Nashville. So for now, so long and goodbye.